The KeysDAN Show. It's the KeysDAN Show. I need a new theme for the KeysDAN Show. You might hear news. You might hear jokes. You never know what you're going to get on the KeysDAN Show. Yeah. What's up, party people? It's KeysDAN with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What Studios. And this is my podcast, The KeysDAN Show. If you want to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag, What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Thursday, August 8th, 2019. Number 1, Trump visits Dayton, El Paso, after shootings, faces protests. President Trump visited Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso, Texas, on Wednesday after mass shootings in those cities left 31 people dead and dozens wounded over the weekend. Trump told people in both communities he was, quote, with them, end quote, and he visited hospitals where wounded survivors were being treated and was met by protesters. Some held signs reading, quote, Trump is racist, end quote, and, quote, send him back, end quote. Many called for gun control and said Trump's anti-immigrant and racially charged rhetoric was inflaming tensions. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham said everybody received Trump, quote, very warmly, end quote. Trump tweeted that he, quote, brings people together, end quote. He also tweeted criticism of Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio and Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley, both Democrats, saying they were, quote, misrepresenting, end quote, his visit. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 2, Puerto Rico gets third governor in less than a week. Puerto Rico's Supreme Court on Wednesday unanimously ruled that the swearing in of Pedro Pierluisi as the U.S. Caribbean Territory's governor was unconstitutional, so he had to resign. Former Governor Ricardo Rosello stepped down last week after massive protest over government corruption and offensive chat messages he exchanged with aides. He named former congressional representative Pierluisi as Secretary of State, putting him next in line to be governor. Puerto Rico's Senate did not confirm Pierluisi, however, before he took office on August 2nd, so the court said he had to go. With Pierluisi out, the next in line was Justice Secretary Wanda Vasquez. She had said she didn't want the job, but took the oath of office shortly after the court's decision, giving Puerto Rico its third governor in 6 days. This is according to NPR and the Associated Press. Number 3, Biden says Trump has fanned the flames of white supremacy. Former Vice President Joe Biden spoke in Burlington, Iowa on Wednesday and condemned President Trump's response to the mass shootings in Ohio and Texas over the weekend, saying the president's, quote, toxic tongue, end quote, has fueled hate and racism. Biden said Trump, quote, has aligned himself with the darkest forces in this nation, end quote, and has failed in, quote, moral leadership, end quote, following the tragedies. Biden also criticized Trump's Monday speech in which he read prepared remarks condemning white supremacy. Despite his words, said Biden, Trump has, quote, fanned the flames of white supremacy in this nation. His low energy, vacant-eyed mouthing of the words written for him condemning white supremacists this week, I don't believe fooled anyone, end quote. Biden argued for stronger gun control and vowed to keep Trump from being reelected. This is according to C-SPAN and Reuters. Number 4, House Democrats launch lawsuit to enforce subpoena for Don McGahn. The Democrat-led House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday filed a lawsuit asking a federal court to force President Trump's former White House counsel, Don McGahn, to testify about, quote, key events, end quote, regarding possible obstruction of justice by Trump. The lawsuit says the committee is trying to determine whether to recommend articles of impeachment against Trump over, quote, obstructive conduct, end quote, described in former special counsel Robert Mueller's report on Russian election meddling and possible obstruction of justice by Trump. The panel called McGahn, quote, most important witness, end quote, after Trump, and said it couldn't fulfill this most solemn constitutional responsibility, end quote, without McGahn's testimony. McGahn has defied a subpoena at the direction of the White House, which says top presidential aides are, quote, absolutely immune from compelled congressional testimony, end quote. This is according to Reuters and Politico. Number 5, Pakistan suspends trade with India, expels diplomat in Kashmir dispute. Pakistan on Wednesday announced plans to suspend trade with India and expel its top diplomat, escalating a fight over the disputed territory of Kashmir. The crisis erupted Monday when India decided to strip Kashmir of its special constitutional status, which had given it the right to make its own laws. Kashmir has long been divided under control of both neighboring countries, although both claim the entire region. India and Pakistan have fought 2 wars over Kashmir, and they most recently clashed in a flurry of air attacks there in February. Both countries have nuclear weapons. This is according to BBC News. Number 6, sex trafficking victim Cyntoia Brown leaves prison. Cyntoia Brown, a sex trafficking victim who in 2006 was sentenced to life in prison over the murder of Johnny Allen, was released on parole Wednesday after Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam, Republican, granted her clemency in January. Brown was 16 when she killed Allen, but was tried as an adult. She said she acted in self-defense and that Allen had solicited her for sex after she was forced into prostitution, also saying that she believed Allen was going to kill her. Following her conviction, Brown would not have been eligible for parole until serving 51 years, but her sentence was commuted. Brown said she looks forward, quote, to using my experiences to help other women and girls suffering abuse and exploitation, end quote. This is according to CBS News. Number 7, 680 arrested in workplace immigration raids in Mississippi. U.S. immigration agents arrested 680 workers, most of them Hispanic, in Wednesday raids on 7 Mississippi food processing plants. The raids, the largest such workplace operations in at least a decade, occurred hours before President Trump visited El Paso, Texas, a majority Latino city on the Mexican border, where a mass shooter killed 22 people over the weekend, shortly after posting an online rant against, quote, Hispanic invasion, end quote. Workers arrested at a Koch Foods plant in Morton were taken to a military hangar for procession on immigrant charges. Dozens of relatives and other supporters gathered nearby and shouted, quote, let them go, end quote. Matthew Albence, U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement's acting director, said the raids were, quote, being done on a racially neutral basis, end quote, based on evidence. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 8, bodies found in Canada believed to be murder suspects. Canadian police said Wednesday that they had found 2 bodies believed to belong to teenagers suspected of killing 3 people in British Columbia. The bodies were found near a river in northern Manitoba after an intense 2-week manhunt for the teens. Cam McLeod, 19, and Briar Schmegelski, 18, were the suspects in the killings of 64-year-old University of British Columbia lecturer Leonard Dick and a young couple, Lucas Fowler, 23, an Australian, and China Dees, 24, an American. Assistant Commissioner Jane McClatchy said that the apparent breakthrough in the case came after police officers discovered personal items belonging to the suspects along the Nelson River. Less than a mile from where those items were found, authorities discovered a damaged aluminum boat. The bodies were found in dense brush nearby. This is according to the New York Times. Number 9, UN report warns climate change, land exploitation, threaten food supply. A United Nations scientific report released Thursday says climate change, along with unprecedented exploitation of land and water resources, could threaten the world's food supply. Quote, the cycle is accelerating, end quote, said NASA climate scientist Cynthia Rosenzweig, a report co-author. Quote, the threat of climate change affecting people's food on their dinner table is increasing, end quote. The report said that climate change is worsening land degradation by thawing permafrost, causing deserts to expand, and making forests more vulnerable to fire, drought, and pests. But efforts to curb greenhouse gas emissions, which are blamed for climate change, and to counter the effects of global warming could be in vain without major changes in global land use and agriculture. Even human diets must change, with the report recommending people eat less meat. This is according to the Associated Press and Nature. Number 10, Equinox, SoulCycle face boycott calls over owner's Trump fundraiser. Equinox fitness clubs and SoulCycle faced calls for boycotts on Wednesday in a backlash over news that the company's owner, billionaire Stephen Ross, planned soon to hold a fundraiser at his Hamptons home for President Trump. High-profile LGBTQ activists and celebrities expressed support for a boycott via social media. A player for the Miami Dolphins, the professional football team Ross owns, was among the supporters. So was comedian Billy Eichner, who tweeted, quote, "Hey, at Equinox, what's your policy for canceling memberships once a member finds out your owner is enabling racism and mass murder?" End quote. Ross said in a statement that he has known Trump for decades and has always told Trump when he disagrees with him. This is according to the Washington Post. That's your 10 things you need to know today for Thursday, August 8th, 2019. Thank you so much for listening to the KeysDAN Show. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. This is KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. I'm out.